everyone. Welcome to our sixth video in our series of video chats. In our last chat, we talked about the power of example mapping and how you could use that for testing requirements early. Today, we continue to think about testing early as part of our holistic testing model. We're going to talk a little bit about mind mapping and how you can use mind mapping to help us in this journey. If you want to know more about this model, you can view our last video chats or go look up a blog post about it on my website, actually. Today we invited, let me stop sharing. There we go. Today we invited a guest to help us talk about mind maps. By the way, I'm Janet Gregory.
I'm Lisa Crispin.
And I'd like you to meet Claudia Badell.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Oh, we're so happy you are. Claudia is from Uruguay. How do you say it? Uruguay. And one of our master instructors for the Agile Testing Fellowship. She's done multiple talks on mind mapping. So we thought she'd be exactly the right person to help us today on this subject.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
for having me.
It's so exciting. So I first learned about mind mapping from Kay and John Johansson at the Agile 2006 conference. And it was so powerful. Like I just remember the instant it happened. So Claudia, how did you get into mind mapping?
Well, I think mind maps are a really powerful tool and they can help in different ways. I have been using them since 2008, more or less. And the first time that I have started to use them was when in my team, we need to have a shared understanding on different features of the product. So we needed to have the big picture as a team. So we use it as a tool to have that sharing knowledge.
Well, that's great. What kind of benefits have you seen? Do you have any examples of the benefits that you've seen when you've used mind maps for this testing early, getting this shared understanding?
Yeah, if you're not familiar with a mind map is a graphical representation of ideas and concepts, and you can use it in anything that you would like to model. In testing, from my experience, it's really powerful because they can help you to organize and visualize different ideas and discuss those ideas as a team. For example, to explicitly identify hidden assumptions. We as testers are really good of spotting those things, and representing those ideas graphically can help us to visualize those as a team. I also think that mind maps are very powerful, for example, when we need to identify the different test conditions and ideas. And if we are doing that as a team, we can include the different expertise and knowledge about the product in that way of thinking and modeling what we need to solve.
Right.
Awesome. Yeah, I've seen a lot of those same benefits.
Yeah, I know in our whole team approach to Agile testing course, one of the benefits is identifying dependencies. So when we introduce the idea of mind mapping, we introduce it to think about a feature, right? So we start with a feature, and then each team thinks about what are the business pieces to this, right? So if you have a product owner and all the team in there, they all have this big picture, and that's what you were saying, right, Claudia?
Yeah.
And then when we debrief that exercise, it becomes very apparent that there's dependencies between the two teams. So as we look at it from a very early perspective, just looking at the features, all of a sudden we can start mitigating the risk, thinking about those dependencies on that big picture feature.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, because as a team, you can identify those dependencies before start coding. So you are focusing on preventing injecting defect in your code, because you are trying to see the whole picture as a team and how those different variables and the dependencies interact between them. So when you use mind map and you reuse them, as you said, for example, you can have a short story, but then in a second iteration, you you include a second story and go on. You need to have the big picture. So if you only isolate the variables for a story by itself, it's very likely that you will miss the whole picture and the dependencies. So mind maps are very powerful because they help us to iterate in those ideas through the different stories while the system or the product is being extended in somehow.
So a question for you.
Yeah.
Because when I'm teaching my class and doing this, it's easy when we're in person to put a big picture on the wall and everybody can see it. So have you done that in your own experiences? Put something up on the wall so that everybody can go back and look at it and say, what did we forget? Is this still relevant?
Yeah, what we do, sorry, I messed up the word, sorry.
No worries.
What we do is when, for example, we are starting a new feature or a new functionality, just to not to mention a story or features, a new functionality, what we do is a brainstorming with the developers who are going to be involved in the feature, as well as with the product owner.
Yes.
So we start drawing the first version of the mind map together. So we start talking about the different variables, the context, the preconditions. So everyone is sharing the different inputs and thoughts that they have around the new behavior or the new feature itself. So this big picture of mind map, the first scratch of it is done collaborative. Then what we do is the tester start to go in depth with the different test ideas and variables, and then pair with the developer in order to see if those are the variables that both hats are thinking of the feature by itself. And something that for me is really cool when it happened is that when, for example, most of the time we as a tester, we thought in a black box way of thinking about the feature, but the developer has the inside of the code. So there are variables that for us are more difficult to identify because we don't know in depth the code. So when we are doing this pair, we also identify variables that from the point of view of a black box strategy could be more difficult to identify. So we enrich the variables from both perspectives. So as your first question, yeah, we do this first scratch of the mind map together, maybe in a whiteboard, and then we digitalize it. We use a tool. I will not mention it because it's paid. So we use this tool, and then we iterate in the mind map in different moments.
Yeah, it's really nice that there are a lot of tools, and some of them are free that allow you to collaborate in real time in a virtual mind map. So that's really important to many more people these days than it was a couple years ago. I also have found them really useful in exploratory testing. Of course, it's a great brainstorming tool, but also to track exploratory testing. It's like, okay, we tested this and just to make our notes on it. Have you used it for exploratory testing as well?
Yeah, I think when you do this effort of sharing and identifying the variables from the beginning, you can reuse that knowledge, when you are exploring the system, because you are identifying those variables, dependencies, also the context to develop, but also to test it. So when we perform exploratory testing and also regression testing, we use the same mind map with the variables. It's like a metadata, an abstract way of having the variables.
Right.
And then, as you mentioned, when we would like to track the path and which part of the map we explored, we track it, we use colors, and we highlight it in a different way, so we know that this path was explored and the other was not prioritized because of some reason. So yeah, I think it's great. It's a powerful tool for exploratory testing because you don't have to rethink from scratch the ideas. Because at the beginning, you brainstorm with the team and you reuse that knowledge in different cycles of the feature. So for example, imagine that we pair once and then I pair with Janet. And maybe we both, Lisa and I, identify two variables, and then when exploring with Janet, we identify a third one. So we include that third variable, and the next time that someone else in the team will test, will benefit about the thought that we pair together and also with Janet. So we don't have to rethink from scratch.
I love that idea. I'm gonna try that out on our next project. Thank you.
I was just thinking that's a great idea. So do you have to go back then and update the mind map a little bit so that people see what's going on?
Yeah, what we used to say that we have a guardian of the strategy. And what we said is every time that what we have done is to have one mind map per feature. So what we do is to extend the mind map as the feature is extended or updated, or when, for example, we perform regression testing and identify new variables. Because as we are human, we can miss some variables. So the idea is not to, as I said, not to think from scratch each time that we need to test something, is to reuse that knowledge. So what we try to do is to have a very simple mind map in the sense that we don't track the data set, we only track the test variables, the equivalent partition, the boundaries. So all the conditions and dependencies between different functionalities and features in the system. And then when we have to test, we reuse that knowledge. So in that sense, I think they are really powerful for regression testing.
Right.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, lots of uses.
Yeah, I also think it's a really very powerful tool. For example, when someone joins to the team, for example, if you have to share the knowledge of some features, for example, a new developer joined and I want to know which are the different dependencies, how this functionality is related to the other, or which are the things that may change the behavior of functionality, is a very good way of introducing the feature or that module to the person who joined, because you say, okay, when you have to test or you have to think about this feature, you have to think that those things are involved, and you have to take into account if you want to change that module or have to change a piece of code there.
Right. I know mind maps to me are a very natural way to do things.
Yes.
Lisa and I did, well, we've done all 3 books that way.
That's right. We organize our books and each chapter, with a mind map, they're so helpful for so many things.
Yeah. And then it's easy to move them around. And
I like the idea of keeping them as artifacts to help onboard new people and get people familiar with new knowledge.
Yeah, because it's an easy way to see everything in one page.
Yes.
Now, we love visuals.
We do. I have had a couple of people over the years tell me that they cannot think in mind maps. It doesn't make sense to them. But I've only had a couple. Most people gravitate to it very quickly. So I think that small few people that can't, probably the benefits outweigh those couple of people.
Mm-hmm. And you can find another way to get them involved.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I used to say, I say it less often this time, because when we did mind mapping, it was always on a whiteboard or a flip chart or something. Now it's mostly online, but make sure that everybody has access to it.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Because I used to say, make sure everybody has a marker in their hand, or they can't contribute. And the power behind mind mapping is really the contribution that everybody can make.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, also I think that's really an important point. And I think it's important not only to know where the mind map is, also to read it, because sometimes we have a different way of thinking, and it's natural to happen that. But if you want to reuse that knowledge through the different team members, we have to pair with other team members to have a way of writing that everyone in the team can understand our note.
That's true.
Good point.
So true. So any last minute thoughts before we wrap up, because our time's almost done? We'd like to keep these really, I know it's very quick, isn't it? We like to keep them short. And
it's an easy thing to experiment with. It's really easy to get going with it. So we just encourage everybody to give it a try.
Yep. Start with a focus point and then just start thinking out from there.
There's no wrong way to do it. So
it doesn't have to be pretty.
Exactly.
I think that's the biggest thing. Yes.
Yeah.
All right. So let's just end up here with, I'll share my screen again so that you can get our contact information.
Yeah, we love for people to get in
questions.
touch anytime with your questions and comments and
yeah,
ideas for future video chats.
Exactly. Or if you want to be a guest.
Sure.
Thank you.
All right. So here's the Agile Testing Fellowship contact information. And like I said, we've got the course and other things, but here's all of our contact information, including Claudia. She has a company called Jigsaw Labs, right? Yes. So please find us on Twitter, find us on LinkedIn, find us through our website. Any place, we're pretty easy to find. Thank you, Claudia, for joining us.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And thanks for all you do for our community in Uruguay and for around the whole world. So.
Thank you.
Yes.
I'm flattered.
Oh, Claudia is also translating our Agile Testing condensed book into Spanish for us.
Yeah.
Yay.
Yes.
I know. Can't wait. All right. So thanks very much, everyone. And we will see you next time.
Bye. Thanks.
Bye-bye. Thank you very much for having me.